Let me ask you something before I start. What would you do if you woke up one morning, looked out your window, and realized someone was building a house on your land without your permission? Because that's exactly what happened to me. And no, this isn't a misunderstanding. This isn't a boundary dispute. This isn't a survey error. This was deliberate, calculated, and done by the very people who are supposed to protect the neighborhood, the HOA. About my home 8 years ago. Quiet subdivision, tree-lined streets, nothing fancy but peaceful. When I signed the papers, there was one detail that stood out. My lot included a small, unused parcel behind my backyard, technically zoned as private green space, deeded entirely to me. The realtor even joked, "Looks like you'll always have privacy back there." I like that. For years, nothing happened. Just trees, grass, and the occasional deer. I fenced part of it, kept it clean, paid taxes on it every year. No issues. Then, one Monday morning, I heard machinery. Not lawn equipment, not a truck, heavy equipment. I stepped outside, and my stomach dropped. There were construction vehicles on my land. Men in hard hats, stakes in the ground, wooden frames already going up. I walked straight up to them and asked, "Who authorized this?" One of the workers shrugged and said, "We're building the HOA maintenance house." I laughed. I honestly thought it was a joke. "Not here, you're not," I said. "This is private property." He pointed at a laminated site plan and replied, "HOA owns this section. We're just following orders." That was the moment my blood went cold. I went home, grabbed my deed, my survey, and marched straight to the HOA office. The HOA president, let's call him Gary, leaned back in his chair while I explained. Then he smiled. A smug, dismissive smile. "Oh yeah," he said casually. "We approved that last quarter." I stared at him. "You approved building on my land?" Gary tapped the table. "Well, it's not really your land. It's community adjacent. You won't even notice." I slammed my papers down. "Here's the deed, here's the survey, and here's the tax record with my name on it." Gary barely glanced at them. "Our attorney says we're covered." That was the first red flag. Actually, the first of many. I sent certified letters. I emailed. I demanded a stop work order. They ignored every single one. Construction continued, and every nail they drove felt like an insult. Every wall that went up felt like theft. And that's when I made the decision that would change everything. The HOA didn't just ignore me. They escalated. 2 weeks after construction began, I received a letter. Not an apology, not an explanation, a violation notice. It claimed I was interfering with HOA operations by harassing contractors and attempting to obstruct community development. They fined me $500. I couldn't believe it. They were stealing my land and fining me. I showed up at the next HOA meeting. Full room. Board members lined up like judges. Residents watching quietly. I laid everything out. The deed, the survey, the emails, the letters. And then Gary said something I will never forget. "Sometimes," he said, "individual ownership needs to take a back seat to the greater good of the community." The room was silent. I asked him point blank, "Do you have written permission, eminent domain approval, a court order?" He didn't answer. Instead, the HOA attorney spoke up. "The HOA believes this land falls under easement rights granted in the CC&Rs. That was a lie. I knew it, they knew it, and they were counting on me not having the resources to fight. But here's what they didn't know. I don't back down when I'm right. I hired a land use attorney. Within 48 hours, he confirmed it. The HOA had zero legal authority to build there. No easement, no variance, no approval. What they built was illegal. I sent them one final letter, a cease and desist, a demand for removal, a 14-day deadline. Their response? Another fine. And construction continued. By week 6, the structure was almost finished. Walls, roof, electrical. That's when my attorney said the words that changed everything. You have the right to remove unauthorized structures from your land. I asked him, you mean tear it down? He nodded. As long as you document everything. I didn't sleep that night, because I knew what I was about to do would make me the villain in their story. But I also knew this. If I didn't stop them now, they would do it again. I didn't do it quietly, and I didn't do it in anger. I did it by the book. I hired a licensed demolition crew, pulled the permits, filed notices, and on a clear Saturday morning, I watched the first wall fall. Some neighbors came running. Someone yelled. Someone cried. Someone filmed. Gary showed up red-faced and shaking. "You can't do this," he screamed. I handed him the paperwork. He threatened me with lawsuits, police, liens. The police showed up. They checked the documents, spoke to my attorney, and then they left. The bulldozer kept moving. By sunset, the illegal house was gone, just rubble, just like that. And for the first time in months, I felt peace. But that peace didn't last. I knew tearing down that building wouldn't be the end of it, but I didn't expect how fast they'd come after me, or how vicious they'd be. 3 days after the demolition, I came home from work and saw a man standing at my door in a suit. He didn't smile, didn't introduce himself. He just handed me an envelope. "You've been served." The HOA was suing me, not just for the building, but for everything they could possibly think of. Destruction of property, interference with HOA operations, loss of community assets, intentional emotional distress, and my favorite one, malicious intent to undermine neighborhood harmony. They were asking for $250,000. I sat at my kitchen table staring at those papers for a long time. My hands were shaking. Not because I thought I was wrong, but because I finally understood what this really was. This wasn't about the building. This was about power. They couldn't stand that a homeowner had said no and actually meant it. Within a week, the intimidation started. I received violation notices for things that had never been an issue before. Grass allegedly half an inch too tall, trash cans visible for too long, a decorative light that didn't match community aesthetics. Fine after fine, letter after letter. Neighbors started acting strange. Some avoided me, some whispered. One even said, "I heard you're being sued for destroying community property." That's when I realized the HOA was controlling the narrative. At the next HOA meeting, Gary stood in front of everyone and said, and I swear this is word for word, "We're being forced to protect the community from reckless behavior." Reckless, for defending my own land. He painted me as unstable, aggressive, dangerous, and some people believed him. That night, I seriously questioned myself. Was this worth it? Was I about to lose everything just to prove a point? Then my attorney called, and his voice was calm, almost amused. "Let them sue," he said. "They just opened a door they should have kept locked." Most people don't understand how lawsuits really work. They think it's dramatic courtroom speeches and surprise witnesses. The real battle happens quietly, during discovery. That's when my attorney demanded internal HOA emails, board meeting minutes, communication with contractors, legal opinions from their attorney. At first, the HOA resisted. They delayed. They lost documents. They tried to claim privilege. The judge wasn't impressed, and eventually, they had no choice. I'll never forget the day my attorney called me into his office. He spread the documents across the table and said, "They're done." Email after email showed the truth. Weeks before construction started, one board member had written, "We don't actually own that parcel. It's deeded to him." Another replied, "Could we ask for permission?" And then came Gary's response, the email that made my stomach drop. "If we wait, he'll say no. Just build it. He won't fight it. They never do." They knew. They knew it wasn't theirs. They knew they were breaking the law, and they did it anyway. Even worse, their attorney had warned them. One legal email clearly stated, Proceeding without landowner consent exposes the HOA to serious liability. Gary ignored it. There were also emails discussing strategy, how to pressure me financially, how to fine me into compliance, how to make an example so other homeowners wouldn't resist future projects. This wasn't incompetence. This was calculated abuse of power. When my attorney filed these documents with the court, the HOA suddenly changed tone. They offered mediation, then a settlement, then silence. But it was too late, because the judge had seen everything. The courtroom was quiet the day of the hearing. Gary wouldn't look at me. The HOA's attorney looked tired, like someone defending a position he no longer believed in. The judge didn't waste time. He went through the evidence slowly, methodically. He pointed out the HOA knowingly built on private land. The HOA ignored legal warnings. The HOA retaliated against the homeowner. The HOA filed a lawsuit in bad faith. Then he said something I'll never forget. This court does not exist to protect organizations from the consequences of their own misconduct. The HOA's claims were dismissed, all of them. But the judge wasn't done. He ordered the HOA to pay my full legal fees, cover demolition cleanup, refund every fine they had issued, issue a written apology. And then the final blow. He referred the board's conduct to the state regulatory authority for further investigation. Gary resigned 2 weeks later. 3 board members followed. The HOA held a special election. New leadership, new rules, new transparency requirements. And me? I kept my land. I rebuilt the fence, planted trees, put up a small sign that simply says, "Private property." Sometimes I sit back there in the evenings and think about how close I came to backing down, how easy it would have been to let them take it, and how many people probably have let them. So if you're watching this and dealing with an HOA that thinks it owns you, remember this: they only win when you believe they're untouchable, because they're not, and I proved it.